The Galactic Empire took great pride in its supposed moral superiority, a rigid doctrine of order imposed upon the lesser, chaotic species of the universe. When they captured 100,000 American civilians from a newly established space colony, the verdict was swift and unquestioned. The charge, defying imperial authority. The sentence, mass execution. This event was publicly broadcast across the known galaxy as a cautionary tale. The broadcast began with a grand display of imperial pageantry. The towering, silver-clad arbiter of galactic order stood before an amphitheater of alien dignitaries. His elongated features twisted into a smug expression as his voice echoed across countless worlds. For crimes against interstellar harmony, for defiance of the Empire's sacred laws, the primitives of Sol 3 shall be erased as an example to all. Let this stand as the day the galaxy learned obedience. The execution was a spectacle. Thousands of humans, bound in energy shackles, were suspended above a shimmering execution platform. The Empire, ever obsessed with symbolic demonstrations, had devised a method as needlessly theatrical as it was horrifying. At the arbiter's signal, energy beams lanced through each prisoner simultaneously, vaporizing them with surgical precision. The holographic projections captured every detail, broadcasting their final moments in pristine, high-definition clarity across Earth. The transmission hijacked every screen, every device capable of receiving a signal. A stunned silence hung over the world as the realization set in. The Empire had just slaughtered 100,000 of their own, and they had dared to make it a spectacle. For one long, agonizing moment, there was no reaction. Then, all at once, the planet ignited. News outlets scrambled to process the event, but their broadcasts were barely keeping up with the sheer velocity of the public's fury. In every corner of the globe, rage boiled over into action. Protesters stormed government buildings, not to demand answers, but to demand war. Social media exploded with calls for retribution. Images of the massacre flooded every platform, accompanied by captions like, "They just wrote their death warrant." Memes circulated at a pace never before seen. Some were grim, others comically defiant. One particularly viral post showed a bald eagle staring at the camera, accompanied by the words, "Avenge us." Another depicted the arbiter of galactic order photoshopped to be wearing a cowboy hat, with the caption, "He don't know he got seals at the White House." President Jack Wallace, a grizzled veteran of Earth's first skirmishes with interstellar politics, watched the chaos unfold. The silence in the Situation Room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Generals and advisors exchanged nervous glances, waiting for the president to speak. The question was unspoken, but deafening: what do we do? Wallace took a deep breath, his jaw tightening. "Give me Admiral Harris." The head of the United States Space Command appeared on the main screen within seconds, his expression already hardened, already knowing what was about to be said. Wallace leaned forward, his voice like cold steel. "Tell me we have an option." Admiral Harris gave a slow nod. "We do." The president exhaled. "Then we're doing it." The plan had been in the works since humanity first made contact with the Empire, a contingency so dangerous that it had been locked away, only to be considered in the most desperate of circumstances. It was called Operation Galactic Justice. Within the hour, the most elite special forces on Earth were activated. Among them was Commander Jack, Tex, Hudson, the kind of man legends were built around. A former Navy SEAL, Hudson had fought in more classified operations than most people had hot meals. He was known for his unconventional tactics, his unnerving ability to stay calm in the middle of absolute chaos, and most importantly, his ability to win. Hudson arrived at the briefing room still in his casual off-duty attire, boots, jeans, and a worn-out t-shirt that read, "Mars or bust." His Texas drawl was thick as ever as he leaned against the table, arms crossed. "So, we doing this, or are we just making a bunch of angry speeches?" General Monroe, a no-nonsense war strategist, tapped the screen, bringing up the mission details. "We've identified a potential target, an Imperial dreadnought currently stationed in neutral space. If we take it, we'll have access to their command networks, their codes, everything." Hudson smirked. "Let me guess, We ain't asking for permission, right? No, Monroe replied. You're going to hijack it. A slow, satisfied grin spread across Hudson's face. Now we're talking. The team assembled within hours, the best of the best, SEALs, Delta Force, Space Force operatives, even a handful of unregulated mercenaries who really wanted to see an alien empire burn. The mood was grim, but the energy was electric. One of Hudson's closest allies, Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Bear Lawson, cracked his knuckles as they boarded their transport. You realize what we're about to do, right? Hudson grinned, tossing him a cigar. Yeah. We're about to make history. Lawson exhaled, shaking his head with a smirk. I was gonna say we're about to piss off the biggest empire in the universe. But sure, let's go with history. As the team prepared for departure, Earth watched. Every human on the planet knew something was coming, even if the details were classified. The streets were alive with patriotic fervor. Bars played classic war anthems, and every news anchor spoke with a barely concealed undercurrent of anticipation. The tension was electric. Then, without warning, every screen on Earth flickered to black. A new broadcast was beginning. The Empire had returned to gloat. The arbiter of galactic order once again appeared, his smug expression unwavering. Humans of Sol 3, do not be foolish. You have been shown the consequences of rebellion. Resist, and you will share their fate. The broadcast cut to Earth's response. The president, standing before a backdrop of the American flag, leaned into the microphone. His face was hard, his voice unwavering. You think you can kill our people and walk away? He shook his head. You just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. The arbiter barely had time to process the human leader's words before his own transmission was hijacked. The next image displayed across every screen in the Empire was SEAL Team 6, already aboard the Imperial Dreadnought, grinning as they held up beers taken from the ship's confiscated supply. Hudson, sitting comfortably in the captain's chair, took a sip, looked straight into the camera, and smirked. Howdy. Then, just as the arbiter's face twisted in horror, the image cut to black. And the war began. The ISS Vengeance, a stolen merchant-class transport ship barely holding itself together, hurtled through the vacuum of space toward its target, the Imperial Dreadnought Vorish Cow. The contrast between the two vessels was almost comedic, one an unassuming human cargo huller retrofitted with just enough stealth tech to slip past enemy patrols, the other a towering war machine the size of a small moon, bristling with energy cannons and guarded by an armada of smaller cruisers. Inside the Vengeance, the strike team readied themselves in the dim glow of red emergency lights. Commander Jack, Tex, Hudson sat on an ammo crate, flipping a combat knife between his fingers. Commander Jack Tex Hudson's fingers remained locked on the mission display, his eyes fixed on the task ahead. The plan was simple on paper: board the Dreadnought, neutralize its command, take control, and execute. It sounded easy, but it was a logistical nightmare. Sergeant Marcus Bear Lawson adjusted his armor plates and glanced at Hudson. You realize this is insane, right? Hudson grinned, chewing on an unlit cigar. Wouldn't have signed up if it wasn't. Across from them, Lieutenant Maya Reynolds, a sharp-eyed intelligence officer with a reputation for ice-cold precision, finished calibrating the hacking terminal she had used to break into the ship's security systems. We only get one shot at this, she warned. If we trip an alarm too soon, we'll be surrounded before we can even find the bridge. Then I guess we won't trip an alarm, Hudson said, standing and adjusting his rifle. Everyone know their roles? Affirmative grunts rippled through the squad. Corporal Danny Sketch Ortiz, their demolition expert, gave his signature thumbs up before tossing a small spherical drone into the air. It hovered in place, scanning their surroundings with an eerie blue glow. We get inside, we go silent, and we hit hard, he said. The Vengeance shuddered as it slipped past the Dreadnought's perimeter defenses, guided by a stolen Imperial transponder code that wouldn't hold up to scrutiny for long. They had one chance. The docking clamp engaged with a metallic clunk, and within moments, the hull cutter drilled through the enemy's ship's airlock. The circular breach opened with a hiss, and the team moved in with the ruthless efficiency of seasoned warriors. Inside, the dim corridors pulsed with the unnatural blue glow of imperial architecture, sterile and alien in their symmetrical perfection. Hudson motioned for silence as they moved. The corridors were empty. Too empty. Imperial warships, especially one of this caliber, should have been bustling with officers and guards. Instead, it felt abandoned. Bear scowled. "Don't like this." Reynolds tapped into the ship's internal scanners through a handheld terminal. "I'm picking up movement, but it's concentrated away from us. They might not even realize we're here yet. Let's keep it that way," Hudson murmured. "Stay sharp." The team weaved through the corridors, ducking past security drones and automated turrets. Each obstacle was meticulously bypassed rather than engaged. The trick wasn't brute force, it was subtlety. They weren't here for a firefight, not yet. Then they hit the first complication, a security checkpoint. Two towering Yari enforcers, their amphibian-like bodies covered in thick carapace armor, blocked the only path forward. The guards were chatting in their guttural language, clearly not expecting an incursion. Hudson flicked his knife to Bear, who caught it without hesitation. Bear exhaled, took a step forward, and in one fluid motion, plunged the blade straight through the nearest guard's throat. The alien barely had time to gargle before collapsing. The second guard reached for its weapon, too slow. Hudson was already there, silencing it with a single suppressed shot between the eyes. Sketch caught the bodies before they could hit the ground, dragging them into a nearby storage unit. The rest of the team moved swiftly past, barely missing a beat. They reached their primary objective moments later, an auxiliary control station, their key to the ship's defenses. Reynolds plugged in, fingers flying over the holographic interface as she worked to disable internal sensors and reroute patrols. The ship's internal alarms were designed to detect hacking, but Reynolds knew exactly where to strike, right between the bureaucratic cracks of imperial efficiency. 10 more seconds, she whispered. A mechanical beep signaled her success. "The path to the bridge is clear." Then, over the team's radio channel, a warning. "Patrol incoming." "Sketch," Hudson muttered. He turned toward the corridor, 6 Imperial soldiers. "No time to hide. Guns up!" The firefight was swift, brutal, and one-sided. The Imperials barely had time to process what was happening before the SEALs cut them down with surgical efficiency. Now, the entire operation had a timer. They sprinted toward the bridge, weaving between towering metallic pillars and narrow passageways. Every corridor felt like a potential kill zone, but the team moved with calculated aggression. Each footstep was measured, every weapon ready. They reached the final set of blast doors. Beyond them, the ship's command crew, dozens of high-ranking officers and the ship's commander, Warlord Zyros, a brutal tactician infamous for his campaigns against rebellious species, awaited. Sketch rigged the breach charges. The team stacked up. Hudson counted down. 3, 2, 1. The doors exploded inward, and chaos erupted as the SEALs stormed the bridge. Zyros barely had time to react before Hudson's rifle was pointed straight at his head. The bridge officers panicked, hands flying to consoles in a desperate bid to override the intrusion. Reynolds shot the first officer to reach a terminal. "Hands where I can see 'em," Bear barked. Zyros sneered. "You vermin think you can." Hudson pistol-whipped him hard enough to rattle his teeth. Yeah? Save the monologue." The bridge was theirs. As the rest of the team secured control stations, Reynolds worked her magic, overriding the ship's security lockdowns and sending out false distress signals, fake reports claiming the ship was under attack by unknown forces. The false reports bought them precious time. Hudson yanked Zyros to his feet and pressed a knife against his throat. "We're going to send a message," he growled. The ship's communications system flickered on. Across the Empire, screens that once displayed the Arbiter's propaganda now broadcasted the image of a very smug group of humans sitting comfortably on the bridge of one of the most powerful ships in the fleet. Hudson tilted his head. "Howdy." Zyros, still restrained, spat venomously. You've signed your own death warrants. Hudson grinned, reaching for the ship's control panel. Nah, he said. We just signed yours. Then, with a single push of a button, the dreadnought's weapon system powered up and turned inward, locking onto the Imperial fleet surrounding them. The SEALs had just hijacked a doomsday machine. The next phase of the war had begun. The bridge of the Imperial dreadnought Vorish Cow was now an unholy mess of broken consoles, unconscious alien officers, and the unmistakable sound of country rock music blaring over the ship's PA system. The towering warlord Zyros, bound and gagged, glared murderously at Commander Jack Tex Hudson. Comfortable in the command chair, Hudson's boots were kicked up on the console, a cigar wedged between his teeth as he swirled an alien beverage in a crystal goblet, critiquing its flavor. You know, Hudson mused, smacking his lips. For an evil empire, y'all got some damn good booze. Beside him, Sergeant Marcus, Bear, Lawson snorted, adjusting his combat vest. Reminds me of that time we liberated that cartel bunker in Nicaragua. Lot of dead guys, lot of good tequila. Lieutenant Maya Reynolds, already deep in the ship's control systems, ignored them both. You idiots do realize we have an entire Imperial fleet surrounding us, right? We need to move now. Hudson stretched, rolling his shoulders. Ain't no fun if they don't get a fair fight. Reynolds spun around. We stole their flagship. The fight isn't fair, it's suicidal. Hudson grinned. Ain't that what they said about the Alamo? Reynolds threw up her hands. The Alamo fell. Yeah, but it felt real patriotic while it was happening. Before she could argue further, the fleet hailed them. The central screen flickered, revealing a grotesque, armor-clad alien, Grand Marshal Korth, commander of the Imperial Armada. His reptilian features twisted in disbelief as he took in the scene. Zyros? Korth asked. Hudson reached over, yanked off Zyros's gag, and held the communicator to his face. Zyros sneered, but he wasn't stupid. He knew what Hudson wanted. The ship is lost, he spat. They control the bridge. Kill them before they... Hudson regagged him mid-sentence. He talks too much. Korth's expression darkened. You insignificant primates! Do you truly believe you can win? Hudson leaned in, flashing a wolfish grin. Buddy, I don't need to believe. I already did. He slammed a button on the console. The dreadnought's cannons roared to life. In an instant, the most powerful warship in the Empire turned on its own fleet. The first plasma lance speared straight through a nearby Imperial cruiser, detonating it in a burst of molten wreckage. The surrounding warships scrambled to react, their formations breaking as the dreadnought's weapons targeted them with merciless efficiency. Korth's image vanished, replaced by an emergency alert flashing across the bridge. The fleet was panicking. Bear whistled low. Well, I'll be damned. We're officially an act of God. Reynolds worked feverishly at her console. I'm rerouting their command signals. We can jam their comms, but not for long. They're going to regroup fast. Hudson cracked his knuckles. Then we make sure they don't get the chance. He turned to Corporal Danny, Sketch, Ortiz, who was grinning ear to ear while strapping a bandolier of explosives across his chest. Sketch, how much damage could you do to their main engines if you got creative? Sketch's eyes practically sparkled. Oh, Commander, I thought you'd never ask. With the Imperial fleet in disarray, the SEALs split up. Sketch and Bear stormed down to engineering, plasma rifles blazing as they cut through waves of alien security forces. The corridors shook as the engines overheated, alarms blaring while Sketch planted a special surprise, a detonator linked to the ship's reactor core. Meanwhile, Hudson and Reynolds hijacked the fleet's comms network, broadcasting a new message across the entire Empire. The screens of millions of alien citizens flickered to a live feed of Hudson standing over a bruised and bound Zyros, casually twirling a combat knife. Howdy, y'all, he drawled, tipping an imaginary hat. Figured it's about time you heard from us personally. Now I know the Empire's been telling y'all that humans are just some backwater savages who don't know their place, but let me ask you this, if we're so primitive, How come we just stole the biggest damned ship in your fleet? He stepped aside, revealing wreckage upon wreckage of Imperial warships burning in the void behind him. Now I ain't much for speeches, Hudson continued, cracking his neck, so I'll keep this simple. You picked a fight with the wrong species. He grabbed Zyros by the collar and yanked him up to the camera. This son of a... He's the guy responsible for executing 100,000 innocent people. People who weren't soldiers, who weren't a threat, just folks trying to live. So now, I gotta ask y'all something. Hudson pulled out his sidearm, spinning it lazily. Does this guy deserve to keep breathing? The Empire collectively held its breath. Zyros struggled against his restraints, his eyes darting wildly as the realization dawned on him. He was no longer feared. He was expendable. Across the galaxy, alien citizens saw the truth. The Empire, once thought to be an unshakable, invincible force, was losing to a handful of humans. And worse, the humans were having fun. Hudson let the silence stretch for a beat, then smirked. You know what I think? I got my answer. With one shot, he ended Zyros' reign. His body crumpled. The galaxy erupted. Rebel factions, long suppressed under the Empire's boot, took the moment as a sign. Across the stars, uprisings began. But the fight wasn't over. Back on the bridge, Reynolds snapped her head up from the console. Fleet's regrouping. They're sending in reinforcements. If we don't move, we're done. Hudson exhaled, cracking his knuckles. Then let's go out with a bang. Sketch's voice crackled over the radio. All charges set, boss. This bird is ready to blow. Hudson took one last look at the battlefield. The dreadnought was already beginning to shake, its death throes imminent. He keyed into the fleet-wide comms one last time. To all y'all still loyal to the Empire, y'all better run. Then, to his team. Detonate. A chain reaction of fire and death consumed the dreadnought as the SEALs commandeered an escape shuttle, rocketing away just as the monstrous warship tore itself apart from the inside. Behind them, the explosion rippled through the battlefield, consuming dozens of Imperial ships in its fiery wake. The Empire's fleet was decimated. The human strike team was alive as the shuttle hurtled toward friendly space. Hudson leaned back in his seat, hands behind his head. Bear let out a deep breath, shaking his head. You are one crazy son of a Texas. Hudson grinned. Damn right I am. The war wasn't over, but the galaxy now knew one thing for certain. Humanity wasn't just fighting back, they were winning. The Imperial throne room, a cavernous expanse of darkened steel and hovering holographic banners, the throne room had never known the stain of fear, until now. Emperor Vexer, supreme ruler of the Galactic Empire, sat rigid in his throne of polished obsidian. His clawed hands gripped the armrests with a force that had dented the metal. His 3 reptilian eyes darted across the room, taking in the shattered remains of his elite guards. The grand imperial banners that once draped from the ceiling in proud defiance of all lesser species were now riddled with bullet holes and scorch marks. And standing before him, in a posture that suggested absolute confidence, no, something worse, casual indifference, was Commander Jack, Tex, Hudson. Hudson sauntered forward, his combat boots clanking against the pristine floor, leaving a trail of dust and dried alien blood in his wake. The SEALs had torn through the palace like a force of nature, meeting resistance at every turn and laughing as they crushed it underfoot. Behind Hudson, Sergeant Marcus, Bear, Lawson, Lieutenant Maya Reynolds, and Corporal Danny, Sketch, Ortiz flanked his sides like specters of death. Bear rolled his shoulders, cracking his knuckles as he surveyed the throne room with a distinct lack of respect. Reynolds, ever the professional, kept her plasma rifle aimed at the remaining palace guards, who were too paralyzed with fear to even reach for their weapons. Sketch had already started humming the tune of the Star-Spangled Banner. Under his breath, the sound deeply unsettling to the surviving alien nobility huddled in the corners of the chamber, shaking in their robes of power. Hudson came to a stop at the base of the throne and sighed. Well, here we are. The Emperor's voice came slow and deliberate, masking the tremor in his throat. Do you have any idea what you have done? Hudson grinned, running a hand along the armrest of the throne before giving it a mocking pat. Well, let's see. We stole your flagship, blew up your fleet, started a rebellion across half the galaxy, and executed your top general on live TV. He shot a glance at Reynolds, who nodded in confirmation. Oh yeah, we just stormed your palace in broad daylight. He let out a satisfied breath. So yeah, reckon we got a pretty good idea of what we've done. The Emperor's jaw clenched. You have sown chaos. Do you truly believe your species, your insignificant primitive species, can govern an empire of 1,000 worlds? Hudson cocked his head, eyes glinting with amusement. Oh, buddy, we ain't governing a damn thing. The Emperor hesitated. Then what do you want? Hudson's grin widened. Glad you asked? He turned, stepping back and gesturing toward Reynolds, who pulled out a holographic contract and activated it in midair. This here, Hudson explained, is our official terms of surrender. You sign it, and we let you keep breathing. He tapped the document. In exchange for letting you and your cronies live out your lives in exile on some nice backwater moon, the United States of Earth is officially taking over operations. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. You mean to dismantle the Empire? Hudson laughed, shaking his head. Hell no, we're renaming it. Kinda like how y'all took planets and renamed them things we couldn't pronounce. We're returning the favor. Reynolds smirked as she read the official declaration aloud. The Galactic Empire is hereby rebranded as the United Federation of Free Worlds under new management, with immediate restructuring of policies to better reflect human values, including but not limited to freedom of speech, fair elections, the right to own space barbecue pits, and the establishment of an official galactic sports league. Sketch snorted. Pretty sure that last one was Bear's idea. Bear crossed his arms. And I stand by it. The Emperor looked between them, struggling to comprehend the absurdity of what was happening. You mean to tell me you are taking control of the largest empire in the galaxy, and the first things you implement are sports and barbecue? Hudson leaned in, giving the Emperor's shoulder a reassuring squeeze. That and hunting season, he added. You've got a lot of real big critters out here that'd look mighty fine on a smoker. The Emperor exhaled sharply, staring at the unfathomable insanity that was the human species. You are monsters. Hudson's grin was positively wolfish. No, we're Americans. There was no choice. The Emperor signed the document. News spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. The war was over. Imperial planets woke to a new dawn. Their once suppressed overlords fled into obscurity as human diplomats arrived, not with chains, but with grill sets and footballs. The Galactic News Network, which had once been a monument to propaganda, now broadcasted an entirely new cultural experience: Earth-style late-night comedy shows, human music, and, to the absolute horror of many alien intellectuals, reality television. The first official act of the United Federation of Free Worlds was televised live. Hudson, still wearing his tactical vest, stood before the cameras with a beer in one hand and a newly printed Galactic Constitution in the other. Listen up, y'all. We ain't here to be tyrants, he said. We just figured if you're going to have a galactic empire, might as well be a fun one. He gestured toward a massive arena in the background, where aliens of all species had gathered for starters. We're settling interplanetary disputes the proper way, with a damn football game. The crowd erupted into cheers behind him. Bear, Reynolds, and Sketch stood proudly, watching as the galaxy embraced its new reality. The next act, the official reinstatement of space NASCAR. And somewhere out in the void, the last remnants of the old empire watched in horror as their civilization, once the pinnacle of order, was reduced to beer, barbecue, and the absolute chaos of human culture. And they couldn't do a damn thing about it. Hudson took one last swig from his bottle, then held it up in a toast to the stars. To the future. Bear clapped him on the back. To our future. And with that, humanity became the most powerful force in the galaxy, not because they had the strongest weapons, not because they had the most advanced technology, but because, against all odds, they made the galaxy fun.